It's been a rough stretch for the fighting nerds, and things only got worse when Jean Silva became the latest member of the team to come up short under the UFC spotlight. Silva, nicknamed Lord, headlined UFC Noche in his first ever main event, taking on the surging Diego Lopes. For Silva, it was meant to be a breakout moment, but instead, Lopes stole the show, finishing the fight in the second round and boosting his case as a future contender at 145 pounds. With that kind of performance, talk of Lopes earning another shot at Alexander Volkanovski quickly surfaced. But not everyone in the division agrees that he's earned it. Lerone Murphy, who has been building momentum of his own with an undefeated streak and a reputation for derailing hype trains, wasted no time voicing his opinion. The English striker, remembered for handing Aaron Pico a brutal debut loss, took to social media to argue that Lopes doesn't deserve a title fight just yet. His reasoning was simple. Jean Silva isn't a top 5 featherweight, and beating him doesn't push Lopes directly into title contention. How is Aljo's name even in the mix? I'm confused. Bro's 2-2 in his last 4 fights. He was a good bantamweight, but an average featherweight. Only one name makes sense, and that is Lerone Murphy, Murphy declared on X. Murphy wasn't just targeting Lopes, though. He also turned his fire on Aljamain Sterling, the former bantamweight champion who has publicly campaigned for a crack at Volkanovski since moving up to 145. Murphy pointed to Sterling's mixed results in recent outings and argued that Funkmaster hasn't looked anywhere near as dominant at featherweight as he did at featherweight. Diego done amazing against Silva, but not much changes in a rematch against Volk. The people want to see new matchups. I'm 17-0 for a reason. It's my time, Murphy added, putting his undefeated streak front and center. Murphy wasn't just targeting Lopes, though. He also turned his fire on Aljamain Sterling, the former bantamweight champion who has publicly campaigned for a crack at Volkanovski since moving up to 145. Murphy pointed to Sterling's mixed results in recent outings and argued that Funkmaster hasn't looked anywhere near as dominant at featherweight as he did at bantamweight. Diego done amazing against Silva, but not much changes in a rematch against Volk. The people want to see new matchups. I'm 17-0 for a reason. It's my time, Murphy added, putting his undefeated streak front and center. That leaves the featherweight picture tangled. Lopes, while thrilled with his latest victory, showed flexibility after UFC Noche, saying he's willing to take on one more big test before demanding a title fight if that's what Dana White and the matchmakers want. If you think I need one more fight, I'll take one more fight, so send me the next guy, Lopes told fans during his post-fight interview. And Sterling, watching closely from the sidelines, wasted no time inserting himself into that equation, calling for a showdown with Lopes, and even framing it as a title eliminator. "Winner gets the title shot. Run it," Sterling wrote on Instagram, posting a photo alongside Lopes to drive the message home. For Sterling, this would be the fight that cements his place at featherweight after a decorated run at bantamweight. While for Lopes, it would be the proving ground to silence any doubts about whether he's ready for the top of the division. The fan reaction has been loud and clear in one respect. Very few seem eager to see Sterling jump straight into a title fight with Volkanovski. Instead, the idea of Lopes versus Sterling has gained traction as a clash that would test both men's legitimacy at 145 while buying time for Volkanovski to either recover from his last defense or explore other opponents. And in the background, Lerone Murphy continues to bang the drum, insisting that his unbeaten streak should carry more weight than a single impressive performance against Jean Silva. What happens next comes down to UFC matchmaking and the promotional priorities Dana White sees for the division. Murphy wants Volkanovski now. Sterling wants Lopes. Lopes says he'll fight anyone, and the fans are debating every possible outcome. One thing is for sure, the featherweight title picture hasn't been this lively in years, and with contenders clashing over who's most deserving, it sets up an intriguing few months ahead for Alexander Volkanovski's throne.
Michael Venom Page isn't ready to slow down, and he's making it clear that he wants back inside the octagon before the year is out. The flashy striker, known for his unorthodox style and highlight reel knockouts, has already made waves since arriving in the UFC, and now he's zeroing in on his next potential challenge, one of the most dangerous undefeated prospects in the welterweight division. After taking on the unusual task of moving up to middleweight, Page silenced critics with statement wins over Shara Bullet Magomedov and Jared Cannonier. Despite his success at 185 pounds, the 38-year-old has his eyes back on the welterweight division, where he first built his reputation as a slick and unpredictable finisher. Initially, Page floated Carlos Prates as a possible opponent following UFC 319, but instead of getting that fight, the UFC booked Prates into a title matchup with Leon Edwards at UFC 322. That left Page scanning the division for fresh blood, and his attention quickly shifted to Michael Morales, the 18-0 Ecuadorian standout who recently dismantled former title challenger Gilbert Burns. "I actually asked for an undefeated fighter. I'm just going to start taking out everybody. Michael Morales, he's like 18-0, Page revealed during promotion for his Total Combat event in England. Again, just silence. I thought it would be perfect. Me fight him, and then I fight the winner of Leon and Prates, hopefully in the UK. So far, the call-out hasn't drawn a public response from Morales or the UFC, and Page admits that he feels trapped in an awkward position. At 38 years old, he's well aware that the UFC sees him differently than its crop of hungry young contenders. "I feel like I'm in a very difficult space," Page explained. "I guess because of my age and the timing of things, they're thinking, he's got a very good brand. I could be the gatekeeper to help grow their fighters. And then I started beating them. It's like we don't want to do that anymore." That frustration is compounded by the fact that Page has already compiled a respectable 3-1 record inside the UFC, with his only setback being a razor-close decision to Ian Machado Gary in 2024. Since then, he's knocked off 2 middleweight contenders and handled veteran Kevin Holland, proving he's far from a stepping stone. Yet, according to Page, it's become harder to get opponents to agree to face him. "The guys that are more senior, like myself, they've been in there a long time, just don't want to fight me. I mentioned I'm happy to fight Prates, it was no phone call, no nothing. Then all of a sudden he's got a fight. I'm in a bit of a weird area at the moment. You may start to see me call out a lot of people just to try and make something happen." Ideally, Page wants to ride his momentum into one more fight before the end of 2025, keeping himself active before turning his focus toward a possible homecoming fight in the United Kingdom in 2026. With the UFC unlikely to return to the UK before March, Page knows that waiting would mean nearly 7 months on the sidelines. That's not an option he's willing to accept. "I just want to get one more on this side of the year before the new year," Page said, "but I don't really see that many people's hands up. Let's see what happens. They always come back to the UK in March. This is why I want to get one more in before the end of this year. I know if I don't get a fight now, they're going to make me wait until March, and I want to be active. I'm just pushing to try and get anything going." Whether it's Michael Morales or another welterweight contender willing to take the risk, Page is determined to prove that even at 38, he's still one of the trickiest puzzles in the division.
Artem Lobov has never been far from the MMA spotlight, even in retirement. And now the Russian Hammer is stepping back into the cage for a fight he insists has been lingering in his mind for years. The former UFC featherweight, who built much of his notoriety through his connection with Conor McGregor and a reputation for being willing to fight anyone at any time, has revealed why he's ending his retirement to face Zubaira Tukhugov under the PFL banner at Champions Series 2. For Lobov, this isn't about a comeback run or chasing belts, it's about unfinished business. His history with Tukhugov and the larger feud between McGregor's camp and Khabib Nurmagomedov's team has been well documented. From the infamous hotel confrontation where Khabib and his teammates cornered Lobov to the all-out chaos of the UFC 229 post-fight brawl, the two men's paths have been intertwined in bad blood for years. While others may have moved on, Lobov insists that for him, this is personal and always has been. Speaking in a recent interview, Lobov laid out his motivation plainly. I said it when I was retiring that look, I'm retiring, but this fight here has to happen, Lobov explained. You know, it's very personal, and I have to take that off. I have to close that chapter, otherwise it's always going to be in the back of my mind, and I'm always going to be thinking about it. So I want to get in and get it done. Lobov admitted he doesn't even see this as a traditional return to fighting, instead framing it as a necessary closure to a long-standing grudge. So I'm not sure if you can call this a comeback or what this is, but it's just something that I knew I was going to do. I said I was going to do it. It was always in the back of my mind. For fans, Lobov's comeback adds another layer to the tangled McGregor-Khabib rivalry, even years removed from its peak. While Tukhugov has gone on to carve out his own career, his name will always be tied to the infamous UFC 229 melee, where he jumped into the octagon during the chaos. That moment, and the years of tension leading up to it, seem to be fueling Lobov's fire now as he prepares for what he views as an inevitable clash. Whether or not Lobov continues fighting after this remains to be seen, but in his mind, this bout isn't about career trajectory. It's about respect, history, and finally scratching an itch that's been bothering him since the height of McGregor versus Khabib. For Artem Lobov, the fight with Tukhugov isn't just another booking. It's the final word on a rivalry he refuses to let fade into the background.
Stephanie Vaquer is quickly becoming one of WWE's most compelling stars, and while her rise in the wrestling world is undeniable, she's also openly embracing her admiration for another TKO property, the UFC. In a recent interview with Sports Illustrated, the former New Japan Strong Women's Champion explained just how much she enjoys the world of mixed martial arts, and even hinted at her hopes to one day collaborate with the UFC in some capacity. For Vaquer, this isn't just casual fandom. She has had hands-on training experiences at the Mexico-based UFC Performance Institute, where she got a taste of the MMA environment, and she also shares a close bond with fellow Chilean athlete Ignacio Bahamondes, who currently competes in the UFC. Their friendship, coupled with her natural fighting spirit, has made her even more intrigued by the crossover potential between WWE and UFC. I love the UFC, Vaquer said. I've been training in Mexico at the UFC Performance Center, and I have a really good friend there. I'm a big fan of the UFC, and I hope one day we can do something together. I know it's a different discipline from pro wrestling, but we are both fighters. My friend Ignacio Bahamondes is famous in Chile, and he's also my best friend. In both fighting and wrestling, he understands me, the sport, and the discipline. That's why I hope one day we can do something together. Her enthusiasm for the UFC ties directly into the larger vision that TKO has been shaping since the WWE-UFC merger in 2023. Vaquer's comments don't necessarily mean she's considering a professional fight inside the octagon, but rather, they open the door to many possibilities: guest appearances, commentary roles, collaborative training content, or even creative digital crossover projects that highlight both WWE personalities and UFC fighters. Earlier this year, Vaquer gave fans a glimpse of what such synergy might look like when she appeared at the UFC Performance Institute in Mexico, showcasing some of her pro wrestling skills. The appearance coincided with a UFC Fight Night event in the region, where Vaquer was spotlighted on the broadcast as a representative of WWE. That kind of visibility highlights how TKO is strategically blending its two biggest properties, using crossover stars like Vaquer to strengthen the connection between pro wrestling and MMA audiences. For WWE, Vaquer represents an emerging star who not only thrives in the squared circle, but also carries mainstream crossover appeal. For UFC, her presence underscores how fighters and wrestlers can exist under the same entertainment umbrella without blurring their respective identities, but still contributing to the shared narrative of combat sports and entertainment.
As Vaquer continues to rise in WWE, her openness about wanting to work with the UFC feels like a natural extension of the shared TKO universe. Whether it's inside the training facilities, on-screen collaborations, or promotional crossovers, Stephanie Vaquer embodies the spirit of synergy that's increasingly defining the future of WWE and UFC under one banner. The fighting nerds have been riding a roller coaster in recent months, and the MMA community has started to question whether their skid is a temporary slump or the beginning of a downward spiral. Last year, Carlos Prates became the first member of the squad to taste defeat inside the octagon, but he bounced back with a thunderous knockout win that reminded fans why he was touted as a dangerous welterweight prospect in the first place. His rebound, however, hasn't been mirrored by his teammates. Caio Borralho, Mauricio Ruffi, and Gene Silva all suffered recent setbacks within weeks of one another, leaving many to wonder if the team's approach is holding them back. That uncertainty prompted some veteran voices to weigh in. On the Pound for Pound podcast, Henry Cejudo argued that the fighting nerds need to rethink their coaching structure. In his view, the team has grown quickly but without adding the depth of coaching necessary to sustain that growth. I feel like they need to bring in more coaches, Cejudo said. As their team continues to keep growing, more fighters are going to come, and it could get diluted. I think they need to bring in some wrestler, a legit wrestler, and then maybe even bring training partners to come and do that. Kamaru Usman agreed, drawing parallels between the fighting nerds and his own time with the Blackzilians. Usman recalled how their team made wrestling a foundation, thanks in large part to Rashad Evans' insistence on recruiting world-class grapplers. Names like Greg Jones, Kenny Monday, and Mike Van Arsdale weren't just coaches, they were cornerstones that elevated the entire roster. Usman suggested the fighting nerds adopt a similar model before their promising stable risks burning out the same way the Blackzilians ultimately did. There is always the use of the term fraud check when fighters start to lose, Usman noted, echoing the skepticism bubbling among fans. This is something the fighting nerds can utilize, getting a good wrestling coach out there. Gene Silva, however, is far from ready to concede that the fighting nerds are falling apart. After his knockout loss to Diego Lopes at Noche UFC, a fight where emotions got the better of him, Silva admitted he rushed in recklessly rather than sticking to his game plan. But instead of dwelling on the loss, Silva promised accountability. "One thing you guys were right about, the fighting nerds lost 3 in a row," Silva said in a candid Instagram video. "So the 3 of us must be making similar mistakes. So for sure, me, Caio, and Ruffi will have a meeting. We'll figure this out and improve. Whether people like it or not, I'm sorry, but we'll be back." It's a pivotal moment for the team. On one hand, they have examples like Carlos Prates, who already proved that one bad night doesn't define a fighter. On the other, they face the reality that growth without structure can lead to cracks in the foundation. The advice from Usman and Cejudo might be exactly what they need, adding wrestling depth, bolstering their coaching staff, and shoring up the finer details before history repeats itself. The question now is simple. Will the fighting nerds learn from these setbacks and rebuild stronger, or are they on the same path to collapse that the Blackzilians once walked?
Tatiana Suarez has made it clear she's had enough of the chatter surrounding her partner Patchy and his UFC debut. After Mix came up short against Mario Bautista earlier this year, plenty of critics online and in the MMA space began questioning whether the former Bellator champion could really make the transition to the UFC and replicate his dominance on the biggest stage in the sport. But Suarez, who has been with Mix for years and knows exactly how hard he works day in and day out, believes those doubters are in for a rude awakening when he makes his return at UFC 320. Suarez, who herself got back into the win column this past weekend with an impressive performance, spoke passionately in defense of Mix during a recent interview. For her, the criticism is not only unfair, it's short-sighted. "Honestly, we could give 2 shits about what people think," she said bluntly. They didn't get a real dose of Patchy Nix, and on October 4th, I'm super excited for that to happen because it'll shut everybody up, and they're going to see how exciting he truly is and what an amazing fighter he is. She went on to explain that the loss to Bautista was hardly an accurate reflection of who Patchy Mix is as a competitor. He accepted the bout on just 3 weeks' notice, and even though he's a massive bantamweight with a tricky weight cut under the best of circumstances, he pushed himself through a brutal cut without the proper camp or resources behind him. The result was a version of Mix that wasn't fully locked in, one that Suarez insists is far from the fighter she knows he can be. They didn't get to see the true version of him, she said. He took it on 3 weeks' notice. He's a massive phantomweight, so that weight cut was very difficult for him. This fight, he's had weeks to prepare, and he's going to show the real version then. Beyond the logistical issues, Suarez also stressed just how much Mix is continuing to grow. Already recognized as one of the best grapplers in the sport, Mix isn't content to rest on his laurels. Instead, he is constantly evolving, adding new wrinkles to his striking, sharpening his wrestling transitions, and refining his cardio and conditioning. Suarez believes that hunger and drive to improve will be the key difference when he steps back into the octagon. He's always trying to evolve, and even though he's such an amazing grappler, he's still getting better and improving, still hungry to get better and become the best version of himself. With UFC 320 right around the corner, Suarez says this next outing against Jakob Wiklach is where the real Patchy Mix will finally arrive in the UFC. For Mix, it's more than just another fight. It's a chance to erase the memory of his debut, silence the critics who doubted him, and show the same dominance that made him a champion before ever setting foot in the octagon. For Suarez, it's also personal. As someone who has faced her own share of doubters and setbacks in her career, she understands the power of proving people wrong and rising to the occasion when everyone counts you out. Together, Suarez and Mix form one of MMA's most respected power couples, and while Suarez continues to climb her way toward UFC gold again, she is standing firmly in Patchy's corner as he looks to remind the world of the fighter he truly is. If her words are any indication, the critics who rushed to judge him after one short-notice fight might soon be eating their words when UFC 320 rolls around.